Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of WTF Walk the Floors. I'm Stephanie Ledger, First Rate Hospitality, and I'm joined with my co host, Michele Kline of Kline Hospitality. Hi, Michele. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, Stephanie. How are you?
Very well. We're wrapping up the end of the year. Can you believe it? Almost 2023.
Crazy excited about what the next year brings, obviously. And I'm also crazy excited about the speaker that is in the house today with us.
Oh, who do we have?
We have Luke Freeman, and he's with Purpose and Performance Group. And we're going to talk about something that totally makes my heart sing. Leadership is my love language, as many of you know already. And Luke is one of those people that creates meaningful connections with the people that he teaches. So, Luke, welcome to the show. Tell us about who you are, why our listeners should engage in any advice that you have for them today, and enlighten us with your leadership, meaningful, genuine connections in all things hospitality.
Okay, wow, what an introduction. I will try very hard to live up to that. So, Stephanie and Michele, thank you so much for having me on. A little bit of my background. I spent what I call my career number one in nonprofit conference and retreat center setting. And it was interesting because in the midst of it, I don't know that I would have said I was operating in the hospitality industry. A lot of that's because I did a lot of program development and program design, and then served on senior leadership team in most of those settings. So I was doing leadership work, strategy work, program design and implementation work. But stepping away from it for several years now, I look back and I just think, the core tenet of our strategies in those settings was really intimacy with our guests, knowing what their needs were, but especially their emotional need. Why are they coming to a conference? Why are they coming to a retreat center? Why are they doing a residential program and staying away from home for a week at times? And knowing what that need was, and then creating experience to meet that need. And I think that's the core of hospitality. My real area of expertise in that setting, and then today as well in a different context, is leadership development. And how do we take folks, whether they're emerging leaders or an established leader, and help them think a little bit differently about leadership. The reason I love leadership and leadership development is because, to me, leadership is a paradox. Leadership is really abundant. On the one hand, you look around you and hierarchically, organizationally, we're surrounded by leaders, whether that's parents, coaches, teachers growing up, or our bosses within organizations. But when you think about the leadership qualities that science knows are most effective, and that we as people inside organizations even really intuit and understand to be most effective, those leaders that exhibit those traits and practice those practices are exceedingly rare. And so we're in this place where there's so many hierarchical leaders, but so few of them are really what we would call transformational leaders that have life impact on the people that they lead and serve. And so that's why I'm passionate about it. So what I do today is help people do that. I've got a team of other folks that do that alongside me at Purpose and Performance Group. And so we do leadership training and process improvement and strategic planning. About half of our clients are in the hospitality industry, and a big chunk of the other half, even though they aren't hospitality, are service industry. So this is really where we live and play every day.
Awesome. This is great. And speaking about the leadership, just a episode or two ago, we were talking about the leaders that, now have become into their leadership roles too quickly and now not have developed those leadership skills. And we pretty much have now set them up for failure, which I'm sure you come across to a lot as well when you're putting on these different events.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's not that the Great Recession is the cause, or I'm sorry, great, yeah, whatever the R word is. Yeah, everything that's happened, right? It's not the pandemic. Yeah, resignation. Thank you. Oh my, I need some more calories today, I think. It's not that is the reason that all of these young leaders that haven't had access to development are in their roles, but it sped up a trend that was already happening.
Yeah.
We know the workforce is aging. We know that where we're going over the next 20, 30 years is more leadership positions than we have people to fill them that are experienced. We're going to have a workforce shortage in general, and that's going to show up as a leadership shortage as well. So yeah, doing a lot of coming back behind some of those promotions and saying, all right, we've got someone that for whatever reason we felt like has potential, but how do we actually skill them up so that they can not just do operational, the stuff that leaders do and sign forms and make some prioritization decisions and directly daily, efforts, but is also really developing the next generation of leaders and making sure that we have enough of a healthy leadership pipeline to really source our own leaders in the future. I think that's the holy grail that most organizations would say they would love to see, but unfortunately, a lot of them are very far from that reality.
Yeah, I also think that there is a little bit to say about the generation that is coming into the workforce, right? We see that they are seeking something else, and I think that it started with our generation of we want to see more meaning, we want to see more connection, we want to, and I think that's what 2020 did. It accelerated that too. So I strongly believe that part of that great resignation that we refer to so passionately has a lot to do with the fact that people are looking for meaning, people are looking for purpose. And at the end of the day, leadership is a choice. Right. So if we're not developing ourselves, if we're not truly connecting with people, if we're not trying to hone in on those perhaps skills that are in our heart more than in our brain and connecting the dots between them, then this resignation is good. This crisis, this labor crisis we're going through is going to take a lot longer to overcome.
Yeah. And I'll just be honest. My fear is that when the recession happens next year, that the trend, the people who are naysayers that say, we don't have to create meaningful workplaces to really retain the next generation, they're going to have some excuses. They're going to be able to say, hey, look, people are staying longer and there's not as much voluntary turnover. And it's going to be because the jobs aren't there because of, broader economic realities. It's not going to be because the trend of people wanting meaningful work and wanting to be able to do something at work that aligns with their values. It's not going to mean that trend is gone. That trend is a long-standing trend, like you said, that I think started with our generation, and is going to only accelerate. I mean, people's expectations are only going to rise.
Absolutely. And then also too of challenging, we were talking about in the pre-show here of the questioning about, okay, why do we do it this way? Why do we have to have a meeting for this? And I think, it started off as well with our generation and even more with the younger generation entering into the workforce of questioning why certain standards are happening or why certain meetings are happening. And then you have the ones that have been in the industry for so long that that's what they're just used to. It's what their parents used to did or what the forefathers of the founders of that company used to did, and no one ever questioned it. That was just it. And now with more people questioning too is now making people also change their mindset in the leadership.
Yeah, we've, this pushback to meaningful work or having shared purpose, or people wanting to holistically align their values between who they are outside of work and who they are at work. Um, when we talk to older generation, I think what we've found to be most helpful is if we're really honest that what we're experiencing and what older generation folks who maybe aren't excited about that shift are feeling is really grief. It's not logistic, operational, well, here's why we need things to be the way they are. Because that's how it often shows up. Well, you see it with work from home a lot. Hey, we need everyone to be here because how will we get anything done? We won't be able to communicate. Well, all the research shows that that's not true, right? Hybrid works great. People are just as productive or more productive.
More productive, I would say, for sure.
Right. But why people say that is because they are feeling a sense of loss and grief for this period that they know and that led them to success and was really helpful and meaningful in their life. And we've even, mapped out the Kubler-Ross change curve, which a lot of people know popularly as the grief cycle, on a whiteboard in a boardroom, and said, okay, I hear you saying these operational reasons why we can't be different. But if you go under the words, like, tell me where we are on this grief cycle, this change curve. And that's been really helpful, just to be honest about, okay, yes, I'm feeling sad. Helping a leader say, I'm feeling sad that the future is going to be different than what I grew up in. And I'm scared that I don't know how to move towards integration with this new norm and new reality. Okay, well, that's something we can do something about and we can move forward on.
Absolutely. It's change and letting go.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can have a full episode where we can address change and letting go for sure. But I want to look at, in order to give our audience something else, let's talk about what are the different ways that we can connect with people, whether it is that you are on a virtual setting, whether it is that you're in person, half and half, whatever that looks like to any organization on the other side listening. What are the various ways that we connect with people? Maybe it's a one-on-one. What is that to you? So tell us, Luke, in your opinion, what are some of those ways that as leaders we can connect with our people in a different way?
Yeah. So this saying comes to mind, which is clarity is kindness. And when I think about, as a leader, when I'm taking sort of an inventory of all the ways that I'm connecting with my team, I'm thinking about how am I making what we're doing, so our strategy, our short-term priorities, even our standard operating practices, how do I make all of that so clear that everyone is empowered to lead themselves in day-to-day decisions and move our organization forward? So for me, I think about, well, part of that is individual development. What's it going to take for me to create clarity that I want everyone on my team to be growing and developing? Well, if I just say that at a meeting, okay, it's sort of clear, but are people going to believe me? Like,
Yeah.
no. I probably need to have one-on-ones with people. So if I really am serious about, I want it to be clear that people should be growing in this role, I probably need time to sit down just with them on some sort of recurring cadence. And then I think about, okay, well, let's say that's clear. That's good. But what about where we're going as an organization? What's the story? What chapter in the story are we living right now? Well, I probably need to have some sort of community event on a regular basis to give people an update. And typically, to me, that's an all hands meeting, monthly, whenever that is, right? That everyone, no matter what shift they're on, has an opportunity to get together with the senior leader for the organization and here's how things went the last month. Here's our priorities for this next month. Here's some things that you're going to be hearing, maybe from marketing or promotions. Here are some challenges that we've heard about, maybe some survey results that you've spoken into, team. Here's the things I can do something about, the things I can't do something about. And here's most important for the coming month. Okay, so there's strategy clarity. And then there's like day-to-day priority clarity. And so what do I need to do with that? Is it a weekly team meeting? Is it a pre-shift before every shift that has some sort of, here's the things we always talk about? Like for me, those are the things that I'm thinking about to say, how am I not leaving things fuzzy? Because there's a lot of things just with guests that are always going to be gray area things that I can't fix, right? But to the degree that I have the power to provide clarity, how can I make it so clear that people really are enabled and empowered to act?
Absolutely. And you mentioned having that cadence, right, with the entire team where we come in and say, from a marketing perspective, this is where we're at, this is where we're going, this is what needs to happen next, or financials or operations or policies and procedures from an HR perspective. That is so critical, especially when we manage large teams like in gaming properties. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of employees, and bringing them all together in those town hall meetings or in those, where they're all under the same roof for, I don't know, maybe it's just 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We're giving them that full update. You're making them part of the objective. You're making them part of the brand. You're making them part of the solution, the strategy, whatever next steps we're taking, as opposed to simply just sending a document or something that your specific department teams are going to read during pre-shift meeting. Oh yeah, the organization went from this to this, right? Or reading your scores. Sure, this is great, but how is the rest? How are the rest doing? Right? It's way more empowering, like you're saying, making them part of the bigger picture. And Stephanie and I talk about the bigger picture a lot because we truly believe in that. Make the team part of something bigger. Now you're connecting the brain with the heart. And when you connect the brain with the heart, you start moving and the needle moves and people can see it. So not only you're creating that environment where people are empowered to do what they need to do, but then they also are able to see how I, as an individual contributor, I am moving that needle. I think that's very powerful in itself.
Yeah, and there's two other things that come to mind with that. One is the medium is the message. And if I care enough about our performance to send an email every week or every month or whatever it is, then I can only expect that my team members are going to care enough. It's email level care, right? So is this text level care? Is it
Yeah.
email level care? Is
That's
it
such a
piece
great
of
way to
paper on
put
the
it.
bulletin board level care? Or is it, no, I prepared for this. I am paying everyone to be here for this 45 minutes or hour or whatever it is. I have a prepared presentation because I care this much about our shared purpose and our progress towards fulfilling that purpose. Now, if I care that much, like that means something. That means a lot more than an email. And the other thing that comes to mind is I think the best leaders know that they don't have the answers. The team has the answers. The people who are out there cleaning off a coffee bar and picking up straw wrappers and whatever else, they know a lot more about trends in what what people want from the coffee bar, right, than I know. And so how do I put those feedback loops in motion? And I'll tell you, like a once a year survey about how are you feeling, are you engaged, like I need to know as a leader much more often to be able to spot
Yes.
trending. If it's going to
Yeah.
take me 3 years to see like engagement of my team trend, because I really need 3 data points to see a trend, like that's way too long. I really need some sort of monthly feedback opportunity where I can hear what's top of mind, what's most important for my guests, but also for my team members.
Absolutely. I think the key word that you said there too is prepared, to making sure that when you are having these meetings, of a town hall meeting or with your own individual one-on-ones, making sure that you're prepared. You're not just saying, okay, I have to do it because I have to do it. The employees are going to feel that and being like, oh, okay, well, this is just an hour that now I get to sit here, have some popcorn and Gatorade, whatever the special treats are in the town hall meeting. And really now, whatever the person is saying, you can feel that it's not prepared. And then it ends up being, now we're having a meeting just to have a meeting. And those are the other things too that, takes us away from the operation or engaging with our employees, because we're now just stuck in mindless meetings, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we are all training facilitators in this room, right? So we have that and more in common. How do you both feel? And Luke, I'll start with you. When it comes to connecting with those in the room, like how do we all create those meaningful connections in the room, so by the time that our trainees leave that room, we know that it has been impactful?
Yeah. So first, I want to like go back a step in the question and say, how do we set the table so that people are excited to walk into the room before they even see us? And I know for our team, we've had a little bit of a mindset shift here from really suggesting that people provide leadership training for supervisors, managers, directors, which is still helpful, and I'm sure we will always do. But instead, to say, hey, if we haven't done any leadership development in the organization at all, we would actually suggest that we start with some sort of self-select opt-in. What are just some leadership essentials that, no matter the role, are helpful to have? And the reason why is because if it's completely optional and opt-in, the level of energy that walks into the room is much different. I mean, you guys know, in any organization, you've got 20-30% people who are really hungry, ready to go. Any new idea, they're going to jump on, they're going to champion it. You've got some group of people in the middle, and then 20-30% who are the detractors, who are actively disengaged, who are trying to just throw grenades into whatever change you're trying to make happen. And if we can minimize those detractors from that first learning group, we enable the people who are really hungry, the people who are kind of leadership curious, have a much better learning environment, and are really encouraged to grow and invest in their own leadership journey. And it's just been a really magical shift when we've moved properties from this kind of prescribed, hey, I'm in this role, so I get this training, to, oh, I can be in any role. And if I'm interested in being a leader and hungry to grow, I can show up. And it gives us permission to ask harder questions, to be honest, and be a little bit more aggressive with what we ask people to engage with in their own leadership journey and mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie, what do you think?
No, this is great. For me, a lot too, what going into the opt-in is, so a lot of training is that I perform is based upon the different departments. So we'll have just front desk or just housekeeping. And then we may have a housekeeper that is interested in transferring over to front desk. So this is a way for them to be able to sit on those trainings, to start hearing about what we're training on, service, on certain standards. And now it's giving them the opportunity to then being able to seeing if this is a department that they want to be able to transfer in, and being like, oh yeah, it's too much guest facing, not for me. Or vice versa, being like, this is great, this is now where I want to move, to being able to move up in the company. So I think those are other opportunities as well, of giving those special moments for them on their own growth as well for the employee.
Yeah, totally. What I've experienced is when I have groups of trainees from various departments in the room, I see something very magical happen, right? We're talking about connections and them having the opportunity to learn something from the other side. Like, what is your experience? What are your struggles? What do you go through when it comes to
Mhm.
this particular topic we are discussing? And them learning best practices from each other. By the time they leave the room, there is that gap that was bridged where now they feel different about the other department, right? Those, especially those properties or those organizations that tend to work in silos. Now there's this little bridge from silo to silo where they can cross back and forth, and they can understand, but wait a minute, if I act this way, this is how this is going to impact the other side of the operation. So I think that having various departments within the same room really creates that magical experience where you can take something extra from beyond the content that is being delivered.
Yeah, and to nerd out on that a little bit, there's this whole body of work on these roles in organizations that are called boundary spanners. And so a boundary spanner is someone who has relationships with people in multiple different functions and departments and really serve as that connective tissue to create connections that maybe wouldn't happen through the formal up and down, or liaisons within the organization. And so when we can both develop leaders, develop technical skill, and create a cohort of people who have relationship and trust with other functions and really serve as those boundary spanners in the organization, we're kind of getting that, 3-for-1, 4-for-1 type win that we're really trying to go for. I mean, I think all of us as trainers, like we're not happy with I teach one thing and people leave with one thing, right? We're always going for, well, maybe I teach something, a concept or a technical skill, but we're building trust at the same time, or building relationship at the same time, or building leadership competency at the same time. So I love this. You're creating boundary spanners with those opt-in co-department groups as well.
I love that.
All of this talk reminds me of that game Lemmigens, where you're having your start point, and then you had to find like how you would get to the next level and moving, the tribe and moving everyone and working all together. So it just reminds me of that game.
So, Luke, what would you say is your WTF mouth opening moment while delivering training or facilitating training, perhaps?
Oh my.
Or maybe while you were, I don't know, creating some of these meaningful conversations.
Sure. I mean, honestly, I'm going to go with an experience from this morning. So I just got back to my computer to record this from being on site with a hospitality property. And we're in probably month 5 or 6 of a 10-month leadership essentials course for a group of supervisors and managers. And we've gone through all different topics, most of them focused on defining the leader's unique leadership style, developing their strengths, and then we're going to walk away with it with what's their career plan and what are their next steps. But today we were talking about survival strategies. And for most of us, when we were young, growing up, we face some sort of stress. For some people, it's really acute and toxic stress. People referred to trauma, right? So we experience these things that prompt survival strategies. You've heard about fight, flight, freeze. Fawn is a newer one that's in there that there's more research about now. So we're talking through these types of stress responses. What survival strategies have we created that we bring with us to work? And, I'm going to try and keep confidentiality here, but I ended up having a one-on-one conversation with someone who had lost a spouse within the last month. And as we talked about different types of stress, and loss of loved ones was like on the list, right? It was very raw and real to that person. And for me, the fact that I get to walk into a room and teach something that every single person in there has experienced, right? And try and give some sort of practical, actionable, here's what I can do with this. Here's how I can become more aware of my responses to stress, a little more intentional of what strategies I'm using rather than just letting my reactivity, win the day and ruin relationships with people around me or put my job in jeopardy. And at the same time, get to have a conversation like that with that level of vulnerability and someone who chose to invite me in and trust me with that and have a conversation about it. I mean, Christmas is like this weekend, so we're like in the middle of the holidays. It was just like a very real human connection that, I don't know, why is it a WTF moment for me? It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I get to do this, like a moment of gratitude and humility. Um, and yeah, so that's the one that comes to mind.
That's beautiful. And I think that it aligns with the thought of we sometimes are in those rooms and we don't realize the impact that we have on the people in the room. And I think that at the end of the day, at least for me, that's like the most magical thing in what we do day in and day out, right? Creating that level of connection where someone will come up and open up that way. I think that's incredible. Thank you for that, Luke. That's a beautiful story. I am so happy that you were able to experience that.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's fresh off the press too.
It is fresh off the press.
What about
This
you,
is great.
Stephanie? What's
Well,
your
I mean, it's hard to top that. I mean, mine is, WTF moments of like the power outage. But then I would have to say of something that, on a meaningful purpose is, this summer I worked with a property and they had a lot of interns. So they're still in college. And those are the moments too, is, training with them and really setting that foundation for their hospitality career or just career in general in the workforce. And I spent 2 months, which was supposed to start off with just a 2-week training, and then ending up now building those relationships and now seeing where they are even 6 months later. It's really amazing, and still keeping in touch with them too, because I know one day they're going to be GMs and they're going to need someone to come and train their staff.
Well, what I love about that story is that sometimes we can see our impact in real time, with a college student making a life decision, you're an intern or whatever. But what it sparks for me is that we have that opportunity every time we're in a room with people.
yeah.
If you really believe that people can change and that
Yes.
they have agency to make a conscious choice to do life differently or do their career differently, we have those opportunities every time we're in a room, every time we have a group of people talking about leadership or a new skill or whatever. And I want to apply that to leaders. If leaders are listening, every time we show up and have a conversation with anyone on our team, that potential that Stephanie described with interns, like that potential for life change is right in front of us.
Yes.
Mhm.
And
Take
so it
it.
really is like, can we see it? Can we grasp it? Can we keep it top of mind so that we don't let those opportunities go by? And can we be having life altering conversations all day, every day? Like, of course not. No, that's not reality. But I think there are a lot more than most of us see, myself included. And if we stop and think about it, the potential we have to influence other people is really amazing.
Incredible.
Absolutely. How
Yes.
about you,
Yes.
Michelle? What's yours?
So for me, many stories, but let me choose one in particular. A specific client who is working really hard on shifting the organization's culture from a really toxic environment to a clean one, to an environment of care and so on. Team members are obviously not there yet. I had leads in the room, and the leads are union employees. So you're kind of in a management position, but at the same time, you are representing the union or you're part of the union representation. So it's a very, very complicated marriage, if you
Mhm.
will. So I had this one team member that, I start off by asking them to introduce themselves. What do you do? And how long you've been with the organization. And I'm telling you, this is people who have been with the organization for years, 30, 25, 27, 16. Like the youngest in the room had been with the organization for maybe 6 years, which
Wow.
is still a very solid number, right? I am such and such, says this person. I think this training is stupid and I'm not willing to participate. I was like, okay, that's great.
Okay.
Right?
Great.
So that person becomes my target. I'm like, I am going to turn you around because I believe in this and I believe in you and I believe that we can all come along, right? So to make a long story short, by the end of the training, he comes up to me and he says, I don't know how you did it, but this was life-changing. To me, that was it. That was it. I could have done nothing that day. That experience was it for me. Like the fact that this guy wasn't willing to open up, he didn't even care to be there. He was there because it was mandatory. And at the end of the training, had the courage to come up to me and say, this was life changing. That's just epic. So that's my WTF moment.
It's awesome.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Luke, for being on our show. We did go a little bit over. I mean, this was a great discussion. Why not to go over and dive in more depth into it? But we hope to have you again on our show. And where can everyone reach you?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is either LinkedIn, just search me up, Luke Freeman, or if you want to go to our website, purposeandperformancegroup.com.
Beautiful, Luke. Thank you so much for sharing these your beautiful words, enlightening, and we are excited to have you on the show maybe in 2023.
That sounds like a great plan. Thank you guys so much. This was so
Super.
fun.
Take care and have a great
Thank
year
you.
ahead of you.